Have you ever wondered why certain parts of yourself, your jealousy, your anger, your pride, never completely go away, no matter how much you try to control them? Most people spend their lives either suppressing these impulses or pretending they don't exist. But what if I told you that your greatest strength is hidden precisely inside these uncomfortable shadows? Imagine this. You're at a dinner table with friends, and someone makes a subtle comment that feels like a jab at you. Instantly, you feel irritation boiling inside. You smile on the surface, but deep down you're angry. You go home later replaying the scene, ashamed that you felt so much rage over something so small. You tell yourself, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be above it. Yet the thought lingers. This scene is more familiar than we admit. We've all been there, caught between the person we want to be and the raw, messy emotions we actually feel. And here lies the hidden truth. Carl Jung believed that our wholeness as human beings does not come from denying these darker parts, but from embracing them. This is the essence of what he called the shadow. Now here's the intriguing twist. The very emotions you're most ashamed of might be the doorway to your maturity, your power, and even your authenticity. To reject them is to stay fragmented. To accept them is to become whole. In today's journey, we will uncover 7 signs that show you have not only met your shadow, but also embraced it. And in doing so, you've grown stronger. These signs aren't the kind of cliches you find in pop psychology. They are deep, often uncomfortable truths that reveal themselves only when you've truly wrestled with your inner contradictions. So as we begin, I invite you to reflect. When was the last time you felt emotions you wanted to hide? What if those moments weren't proof of weakness, but signals of hidden strength waiting to be integrated? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may realize that the very things you thought disqualified you from being good enough are actually the foundation of your deepest character. And before we move on, tell me in the comments, have you ever caught yourself hiding parts of who you are, only to realize later that those very parts were shaping your resilience? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because this journey into the shadow is only just beginning. What if, instead of running from your darker impulses, you learned how to work with them? Imagine for a moment that the anger you usually suppress could be transformed into a sharp sense of justice. Picture your envy not as a shameful weakness, but as a compass, pointing you toward the qualities you secretly admire and wish to develop. Now, imagine how your life would feel if those moments of inner conflict stopped being battles to be fought and instead became invitations to grow. Think about it. How many times have you replayed a conversation in your mind, wishing you had handled it differently? How many hours have you lost wrestling with guilt, shame, or self-criticism? What if those exact moments could become turning points instead of wounds? This is not about indulging destructive behaviors or excusing cruelty. It's about recognizing that your shadow, those feelings you wish would go away, carries raw energy that can be reshaped into strength. Carl Jung insisted that the shadow isn't the enemy, it's the teacher. And when you stop denying it, something incredible happens. You gain access to parts of yourself that were hidden, but not gone. Picture yourself walking into a situation that once made you feel small, a confrontation at work, a conflict in your family, or even an inner battle with self-doubt. In the past, maybe you would have swallowed your truth or exploded in ways you regretted. But now, because you've embraced your shadow, you can stand firm. You can speak calmly without fear, because you've already made peace with the side of you that feels anger, pride, or fear. Can you sense the freedom in that? You no longer waste energy pretending to be someone you're not. You no longer collapse under the weight of your own expectations. You become someone who can acknowledge your flaws honestly, without being controlled by them. This is the life that opens when we stop treating our shadows as enemies. And here's the seed I want you to hold on to. Embracing the shadow is not about becoming darker. It's about becoming more complete. It's about turning raw, chaotic energy into grounded power. So I ask you, what would your days look like if your weaknesses were no longer chains, but tools? What would it feel like to live without constantly hiding from yourself? We live in a culture that glorifies positivity. Think happy thoughts. Stay away from negative people. Don't let anger control you. At first glance, these messages sound wise. Who wouldn't want to be surrounded by light, peace, and harmony? But here's the disruptive truth. By obsessing over positivity, we often become less authentic and, ironically, weaker. Let me be direct. Denying your darkness doesn't make you pure. It makes you fragile. Why? Because anything suppressed doesn't disappear. It hides, grows stronger in the shadows, and eventually bursts out in destructive ways. That's why people who claim they are never angry often explode in unexpected outbursts. That's why those who pride themselves on being always nice sometimes carry hidden resentment that poisons their relationships. Carl Jung warned us of this danger. The more you try to be only good, the more you feed the shadow that waits beneath the surface. The real threat is not the shadow itself, it's the denial of it. This is why the path of genuine maturity doesn't come from pretending to be pure light, but from learning how to walk with both light and darkness. Think about it. The strongest trees don't grow in perfect, comfortable conditions. They grow deep roots precisely because they face storms, droughts, and harsh winds. In the same way, your strength as a human being doesn't come from avoiding conflict with yourself. It comes from wrestling with your contradictions until you can stand firmly in your truth. And here's the paradox that might surprise you. People who integrate their shadow are often calmer, more compassionate, and less reactive than those who deny it. Why? Because they no longer fear what lives inside them. They have already looked into their own darkness and made peace with it. So let's break the illusion. Maturity is not about erasing your flaws. It's about knowing them so well that they can no longer control you. You stop being a victim of your impulses because you've faced them, named them, and chosen how to use their energy. Ask yourself, how much energy are you wasting trying to hide your imperfections? What if facing them directly could give you a stability and strength that forced positivity will never achieve? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who gave us the very concept of the shadow, argued that wholeness requires confrontation with the darker parts of our psyche. He once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This line alone carries the weight of an entire philosophy. True growth does not come from pretending to be radiant, but from courageously looking at what we fear within ourselves. This idea is not just philosophical, it has been echoed across cultures and history. Think of the Greek tragedies where heroes were often undone not by external enemies but by their own inner flaws. Pride, anger, jealousy. Or consider Dostoevsky's novels, where the richness of a character comes not from their virtues alone, but from their ability to wrestle with guilt, despair, and temptation. These works endure because they tell the truth. The human journey is incomplete without facing darkness. Even in religious traditions, the same pattern appears. In Christianity, the path to redemption always involves acknowledgement of sin. In Buddhism, enlightenment requires sitting with suffering, not escaping it. In every case, the lesson repeats. You cannot transcend what you refuse to confront. Modern psychology confirms this too. Studies on emotional regulation show that people who acknowledge their difficult emotions, anger, envy, fear, develop stronger resilience than those who suppress them. Denial creates brittleness. Acceptance builds flexibility. So when we talk about embracing your shadow, this isn't some mystical or abstract idea. It's grounded in the deepest currents of human wisdom. Across literature, religion, and science, the message is the same. Strength is forged not in avoidance, but in integration. And here's the empowering part. By facing your shadow, you join a lineage of thinkers, artists, and seekers who understood that life is richer when you refuse to hide from yourself. You stop living in fragments and begin to embody the full complexity of what it means to be human. So ask yourself, if some of the greatest minds in history, philosophers, writers, spiritual teachers, insist on the necessity of shadow work, what might change in your life if you trusted their wisdom and started listening to your own darkness instead of running from it? Here's the thing most people never realize. The shadow doesn't just live in those explosive moments of anger or jealousy. It silently shapes your everyday choices in ways you rarely notice. It hides in your preferences, your judgments, and even the people you dislike. For example, have you ever found yourself deeply irritated by someone's arrogance, only to realize later that what bothered you was actually your own unacknowledged pride? Or perhaps you've felt resentment toward a colleague who seems ambitious because a part of you secretly longs for the courage to pursue your own ambitions. This is the shadow at work. It projects itself outward, showing you what you've buried inside. The danger is subtle but powerful. When you don't recognize these dynamics, you keep blaming others for what is actually unresolved within yourself. You think, they are selfish, they are envious, they are arrogant, without realizing that your intense reaction is fueled by your own hidden traits. Jung called this projection. When the shadow you refuse to see in yourself gets cast onto the people around you. This is why so many of our conflicts, at work, in friendships, in relationships, repeat like a broken record. We think we're fighting someone else, but in truth, we're wrestling with a part of ourselves. Until we recognize it, the pattern never ends. But here's the liberating insight. Once you begin to see these invisible dynamics, everything changes. Instead of being controlled by your projections, you can pause and ask, why does this person bother me so much? What part of me am I seeing in them? That question alone can turn conflict into self-discovery. And the reward is profound. The more you own your shadow, the less you need to attack or judge others. You start to see them more clearly, with less distortion. You become freer, not because the world has changed, but because your relationship with yourself has. So I leave you with this question. The last time someone got under your skin, was it really about them? Or was it a mirror reflecting back something you'd rather not face? Recognizing this hidden mechanism is one of the strongest signs that you've begun to embrace your shadow. Sometimes the most powerful truths are the simplest ones. Let these words sink in. You are not weak because you have flaws. You are weak only when you refuse to face them. Your anger is not your enemy. It is your raw strength in disguise. What you envy in others is often the map to your own unrealized potential. The shadow you fear is not a prison. It is a doorway. Denial keeps you fragmented. Acceptance makes you whole. Every time you hide from your darkness, you hand it the power to control you. But every time you name it, you reclaim your freedom. These aren't just motivational phrases. They are survival truths for the soul. The people who appear the calmest, the most grounded, are rarely those who eliminated their darkness. They are the ones who befriended it. They learned to say, yes, I have pride. Yes, I feel envy. Yes, I am capable of anger. And because of that, they are no longer held hostage by shame. Think about it. The most trustworthy person is not the one who says, I could never hurt anyone. It's the one who knows exactly how much harm they are capable of and has chosen to restrain it. The person has integrated their shadow. That person has true strength. So here is the paradox in a sentence. The more you own your flaws, the less they own you. I want you to pause here and reflect. Which of these statements strikes you the deepest? Which one unsettles you because you know it touches a truth you've been avoiding? Hold on to that discomfort. It may be your shadow knocking, asking to be seen. Here's the paradox that often surprises people. The more you face your darkness, the more light you bring into the world. At first glance, it sounds contradictory. Shouldn't looking at our flaws make us more bitter, cynical, or even dangerous? But in reality, the opposite is true. Let's take courage as an example. Many believe courage means fearlessness. But real courage exists only in the presence of fear. Without fear, courage has no meaning. The same principle applies to compassion. Genuine compassion does not come from ignoring your capacity for cruelty. It comes from recognizing it, owning it, and choosing a different path. You cannot truly forgive others if you haven't first acknowledged how capable you are of wounding them yourself. Here lies the uncomfortable but liberating truth. Goodness without awareness of darkness is fragile. It's like glass. It looks pure, but it shatters under pressure. Goodness forged in the fire of self-knowledge, however, becomes unbreakable. You stop being good out of fear of judgment and start being good out of a conscious, grounded choice. And notice this. People who have embraced their shadow often appear paradoxical. They can be both firm and gentle, strong and humble, bold and vulnerable. They are not trapped in extremes because they've integrated both sides, instead of swinging wildly between too much and not enough. They hold the tension of opposites and grow stronger because of it. Carl Jung called this process individuation. the integration of all parts of the self, even the ones that seem contradictory. To him, this was the highest aim of human development. Not perfection, but wholeness. So here's a question for you. Are you aiming to be perfect, or are you daring to be whole? The first will leave you exhausted, always hiding your flaws. The second will demand courage, but it will also give you authenticity, depth, and unshakable strength. Remember, you cannot be fully human without both light and shadow. To deny one is to cripple the other. To embrace both is to step into a richer, truer life. Now let's imagine what life looks like once you have truly embraced your shadow. Instead of being drained by constant self-criticism, you begin to feel a grounded confidence. You no longer waste hours rehearsing imaginary conversations or replaying regrets because you've accepted that imperfection is part of your humanity. This acceptance frees up energy you can now invest in growth, creativity, and relationships. Think about the peace that comes from no longer pretending. When you own your flaws openly, you stop living in fear of being found out. You don't have to wear a mask of perfection. You don't need to police every thought or reaction. You can simply be yourself, complex, layered, and real. That authenticity is magnetic. People trust you more because they can sense you're not hiding. The reward also shows up in how you handle conflict. Instead of being thrown into defensiveness or silent resentment, you can acknowledge your emotions without being ruled by them. Anger becomes assertiveness. Envy becomes aspiration. Fear becomes awareness. This transformation gives you a calm strength that others can feel, and that you can rely on in moments of difficulty. And there is another benefit, perhaps the deepest of all: compassion. The more you face your own shadow, the more understanding you have for the shadows of others. You realize that everyone is wrestling with hidden battles, just like you. This awareness softens judgment and opens space for deeper connection. Imagine living a life where you don't need to hide, where your flaws don't shame you, and where your strengths are no longer fragile but grounded in reality. Imagine walking into challenges knowing that even your darkest impulses have been acknowledged and transformed into part of your strength. This is not just self-improvement, it is liberation. The reward of embracing your shadow is not becoming perfect. It is becoming whole. And from that wholeness flows a quiet, unshakable power that no amount of denial or forced positivity can ever give you. So let me ask, if embracing your shadow could give you freedom, authenticity, and deeper connection, isn't it worth the discomfort of facing what you've long avoided? To tie all these pieces together, let's ground the journey of shadow integration in a clear framework. Carl Jung's model of the psyche gives us a powerful lens. He described the human personality as a constellation of parts: the persona, the ego, and the shadow, among others. The persona is the mask we wear in public, the socially acceptable version of ourselves that seeks approval and harmony. The ego is the conscious I, the part of us that makes choices and tells the story of who we are. But the shadow is everything the ego refuses to see. Instincts, impulses, emotions, and even talents that we've repressed because they don't fit the image we want to present. When the shadow is denied, it doesn't disappear. It acts out indirectly. It shows up in projections, addictions, outbursts, or patterns of sabotage. But when it is acknowledged, it becomes a source of vitality. Jung believed that integrating the shadow was not optional. It was essential for what he called individuation, the process of becoming a whole and authentic self. This framework can also be connected to modern psychology. In cognitive behavioral terms, integration resembles becoming aware of unconscious thought patterns that drive behavior. In neuroscience, it reflects the principle that emotional regulation depends not on suppression, but on conscious acknowledgement and reframing. Across disciplines, the message converges. What is hidden must be faced if it is to be transformed. Philosophically, this idea echoes the Greek maxim, "Know thyself." Self-knowledge is not just about listing virtues, it's about daring to look at what we least want to see. Literature reinforces it as well. Think of Shakespeare's tragic heroes, undone by the very flaws they refuse to confront. So here is the structure you can hold on to. 1. Recognize your persona, the mask you show the world. 2. Be honest with your ego. the conscious story you tell yourself. 3. Dare to face your shadow, the hidden material you would rather deny. And 4. Integrate all these parts into a life of authenticity, where you no longer fear your own depths. This is the backbone of shadow work. It is not a quick fix, but a lifelong process. Yet it is also the path that leads from fragmentation to wholeness, from fragile perfection to resilient humanity. We've walked together through the hidden terrain of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we usually deny, suppress, or project onto others. And what we've discovered is not something to fear, but something to embrace. Your flaws are not the end of your story. They are the raw material out of which your strength, your compassion, and your authenticity are born. So here is my invitation. Take a moment after this video to reflect. Ask yourself, which part of me have I been running from? Which flaw, emotion, or impulse have I been too ashamed to name? And then, instead of pushing it away, try to listen. What if that shadow side is not here to destroy you, but to teach you? Remember this, the shadow is not your prison. It is your path to freedom. The more you hide it, the more power it has over you. The more you face it, the more whole and unshakable you become. That is the paradox at the heart of Jung's wisdom. And I want to hear from you. Share in the comments. Which shadow trait have you begun to accept in yourself, and how has it changed the way you see life? When you share, you're not only affirming your own growth, you're also reminding someone else that they're not alone in this journey. If this conversation spoke to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Here we explore the depths of human character, not with empty promises of quick fixes, but with timeless wisdom that asks more of you and gives more back in return. Because at the end of the day, maturity isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming whole. And wholeness only comes when you walk through your shadow with courage, honesty, and humility. So the next time you feel anger, envy, or pride stirring inside, don't rush to silence it. Pause, breathe, and ask, what is this part of me trying to show me? That question might be the beginning of your deepest transformation. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is your hidden strength. Embrace it, and you will discover a power that is quieter, deeper, and far more real than perfection ever could be.